Hi, everyone. So nice to have everybody here today to talk to Replit founders, Amjad and Haya. I'm very, very excited to be here today. I bring my curiosity, both as a maybe just starter in tech, but also as a parent, as an immigrant. I'm very curious about Amjad's journey in tech and his beautiful success story. I want to hear some of the struggles as well. So I'll start by introducing myself. Some of you know me, some of you are even close friends, some of you are family. Some of you I work with together. I'm a math professor by day, and I ended up being a prof. So this will be a prelude maybe to the tone of our conversation, kind of randomly, kind of by accident, carried also by like hidden forces. Like I wanted to go from the east to the west. I wanted to be near my family. I wanted a country where, I could flourish, maybe regardless of what I do in life. I didn't have an undergrad in math, so I kind of just convinced some people that I can do a PhD even if I hadn't done one undergrad course in math. And I succeeded, but then I had to keep up. So I had 3 children, I immigrated. And so I'm here today to hear Amjad's story about family, about immigration, about building together with his wife and with his family and with his larger family. I'll introduce Amjad, although probably most of you know about him. The story of Replit started with Amjad being frustrated at school, at university, with having to every time load his environments. Like he had to spend a sensible amount of time installing the ID, the interpreter, the packages, and so then to figure how everything works out together. And so he went right on to solve this problem and build Replit. So at that time, he didn't pay too much attention to the UI UX. I think that's when Haya came in the picture.
That's right.
And this was around 2008, 2009, right, Amjad?
Yeah.
And then it turned out it was a very, very ambitious project. It took 2 years just to prototype, and then they kind of left it aside and just left it get a life of its own, which it did, while Amjad joined Code Academy as a founding engineer. He moved on from there to being an engineer at Facebook in 2015, and that's when they decided with Haya to actually work on their project. Like they were looking, I'm not sure I understood this correctly, but I think they were looking for a side project. And then you were saying, well, why not our project? Because it already has users. Why not work on our project? And that's where Replit started in full force. So this is kind of the short story of Replit. But what I'm here today for is to hear the long story, the deep story of Amjad and Haya. So I want to hear about your family, about your struggle with immigration, about learning to fight and learning to hold back. So I'd like to hear about that. Amjad, tell us about your childhood.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I'm honored to be here, and Haya will be. I was just texting with her. She'll be joining in a little bit. But those who just joined, we have 2 little kids, so coordinating us to be at the same time in the weekend is especially hard. So childhood. Childhood was super interesting. So I was one of 3 kids. I was the middle child. My father's family. My father was born in Syria. His family is from Palestine. They sort of fled the kind of war there and moved to Syria. And then my father was born in Syria. When he was 6 years old, his dad died, and then they moved to Jordan. His older brother raised him, and he was raised with a bunch of his cousins because his older brother was much older than him, and so he He was like sleeping in a room with other 8 kids, and he would like find a small corner in the house and study. And he was like a very good student. He Palestinians generally value education in an almost irrational way. They'll save every penny and spend it on education. And so my father got a degree in civil engineering from Turkey, which a lot of people in the Middle East would go to, either Turkey or Egypt at the time, where the places where you would go to kind of get an engineering degree. And then came back and immediately started working in government. And he was like a really hardworking engineer, which is in Jordan, in the Middle East in general, it's like there's a lot of corruption. Jordan is actually better than other countries, but there's a lot of corruption, and people tend to do the minimum at their job. But my father actually was very passionate and wanted to make it work. And so he's like this engineer guy. He didn't have a lot of resources. A lot of Palestinians that were engineers who wanted to make money would go actually work in the Gulf region, because the Gulf, in the 60s, 70s, 80s was growing really fast, and with the oil kind of industry. And if you wanted to make a lot of money as an engineer, you would go to Dubai or Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia and make a lot of money. But my father was really passionate about building the infrastructure in Amman, and he saw Amman as something that has a lot of potential. And he met my mom. My mom has a similar story from a different part of the world. Their story, they're a North African native tribe called Amazigh. They're not Arab, and they also fled a war. They fled the French-Algerian War, and they went to Syria as well. And some of my mom's side stayed in Syria, and then some of them moved to Jordan, Amman, because it was like booming. There was more opportunities. They were also largely in poverty, also similarly kind of valued education, and was fairly progressive, sent all the women and girls to school. And my mom studied double major psychology and social studies, and she worked at a bank for a while, and she met my dad, and they got married. And so I was born 1987, older brother and younger brother, and my father got us a computer. So he didn't have a lot of money, but again, this irrational, sort of pursuit of knowledge and curiosity led him to take a big loan and buy a computer in 1993. I think it was an IBM computer. I always kind of try to look back and remember, but I think it was an IBM computer. It had a Microsoft DOS on it. And I remember it very vividly because it's actually one of my earlier, vivid memories. I remember kind of standing behind his back and seeing him unbox this mysterious machine and boot it up and like get this black window with the prompt, and it's this machine that you talk to. That was my impression at the time, because you're typing in this keywords and it does things for you. And it was fascinating. I would just go look at them, and they're of course like single finger typing, trying to figure it out. They make a lot of errors and get really frustrated. And my father's like a very bookworm type of guy, and so he opened the manual and tried to read it end to end, and that was his way of learning. And that's not the best way to hack and learn computers. And for me, I guess I had the hacker spirit from day one, which whenever he would leave the computer, I would go and I would repeat whatever I saw them do. And I learned it pretty quickly. I learned how to create folders, how to execute executables, how to move things around. And one day he found out that I was doing this after he's gone. And at first he was mad because I was like, okay, this is, you're going to destroy this multi-$1,000 computer. And then when he saw that I'm able to actually do interesting things with it, he was really surprised, and he gave me a lot of time on it after that to play with it. And so I was really blessed to have that opportunity, and that really started my obsession with computers, and really haven't stopped since. And so, you know, there's a lot of different milestones that I went through, but you know, every part of my story, my obsession, my career, all of that had to do with computing. The other thing I would say about our family is that it was intellectually curious and very intense. So we would discuss everything from politics, economics to religion, and every discussion will end in tears and blood, because all of us were intense. My father had an intense personality. My mom had an intense personality. My brother and I, would like, my older brother and I would like always fist fight. You know, we'll fight over like, you know, we'll debate monetary policy and end up fighting over that. And it was a very stimulating environment. It was also very intense, and like our friends and our relatives would actually not like to come visit us, because there was this like
I can so relate.
yeah, this super competitive, intense environment. You can feel it in the air, and anything could like become a fight, right?
Were you guys close in age, the three siblings?
Yeah. So my older brother and I especially were like 1 year apart only. My younger brother is 5 years younger than me, so he was always the kind of silent one in this, but it was fun, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And my father, you know, was this like engineer, right brain. I always mix up right and left brain type person. My mom was the arts, kind of liberal arts, spiritual, sort of romantic type person. And so it's and I like to think I got something from both of them. And but there was that tension as well.
So I actually can see that in your writing and your tweets. Do you think your mom has had an influence on you getting quite involved with philosophy and like running your company from deep philosophical principles, and also being very open to debate and struggle and questioning authority? I can see that in your family upbringing.
Yeah, totally true. Like when I got in trouble, my father would get so mad at me, because he's like the disciplined kind of guy, and like I would do something playful. I was always very playful, still am, and I would get me into trouble because I like to push buttons. And my mom sort of understood that. She would always defend me, and he would always, you know, and that caused a lot of fights as well, because I was very I was getting expelled from school, like, you know, once a semester. And at some point things got so bad that they just didn't want to have me back. And for when I was 12, 13, I spent like an entire year at home. And because they wouldn't have me back, and my reputation was so bad that I couldn't get into any other school. And so that was an interesting year. I spent a lot of time alone and got comfortable being alone. But yeah, that was the dynamic. My mom was kind of had that rebellious streak in her, and she encouraged it in me a lot of ways. And she always told me that I was special, and you know, she would not. She was like, you know, just believe in yourself and be confident. And my father was like, discipline is super important. You have to like listen to authority. You have to do your work, and you know, and both are good advice in a lot of ways. And I look back at them at different periods of my life, and sometimes really discipline is really necessary, especially when you're building a company and it's going to take a lot of years and hard work. Discipline becomes super, super important. At the same time, the very active a startup is often rebellious, right? Because you're making a statement that you can do something better than everyone else. And so it requires that first step of saying I know how to do it better than everyone else, including the big companies, all the smart people. So you need both, I think.
Yeah, it really seems like these are the two magic ingredients, being disciplined enough, but also the irrational belief in oneself that they're able to do better. And to have two parents encourage these two sides of someone, I think is really, really amazing. I'll open the floor to questions. And as I said, if you guys want to ask a question, go ahead, introduce yourselves very shortly. And then we move on to the next fun, important chapters. I think Isabella wanted to know. Yeah, go ahead, Isabella.
I can go. So I'm Isabella Granick, and I am a part-time, okay, I'm a mom of these two, the other two that are not of age in these boxes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And they've been to a few of these interintellects, and I am a part-time professor in psychology, and we design games for mental health. And so the main thing that I'm really passionate and curious about is how to design systems in which young people feel their sense of autonomy and agency and are part of the co-creation process around what they're interacting with systems online, right? Because so much of what was the first and second maybe iteration of the internet was done by, corporations that they have very little sort of agency and interaction with. So I love what you do at Replit. And okay, so my silly question is, I really am actually quite curious about what you were expelled for. Like, were you kicking everybody's butt and aggressive, or were you what were you doing to be expelled every semester?
Yeah, a lot of it is just playful, sort of poking fun. I would finish my math homework or math work in school much faster than everyone else, and then I would just joke around, and I would make everyone laugh, distract everyone, and a lot of teachers will just get super angry and super aggressive, and then it gets really intense because I wouldn't back down, and I would feel they're being unfair because I was just trying to be funny, and sometimes it would get a little aggressive, and sometimes in a few cases they would get physical, which is unfortunate, but I wouldn't back down ever, right? And so it always starts with me poking fun. One case where if we're going to talk about that, one case where it was a religious class, and I just kept questioning him on the concept that God knows everything and everything before it happens. And I'm like, okay, so I'm about to raise my hand. That, did God know that I was going to raise my hand? And he's like, yeah, he knows that. I'm like, okay, if then I have no free will. It's like, no, you still have free will. It's like, no, but if God knows that, then it's pre-planned. And he's like, okay, you don't have free will. Okay, so if I don't have free will, why would I get punished for bad things that I would do? And I would keep going down that path, and in some cases they would get really, really angry, and it would become like a big issue because they got angry and they got aggressive, and I wouldn't back down, and it would explode, and that the school would side with the teacher because I have this history of being naughty, and so on and so forth. And by the way, my mom standing by my side often was because she knew that, but because she knew I would a lot of these a lot of these issues that would arise were because I'm questioning, and I'm being intellectually curious. Physics also had a similar thing where I would keep digging, trying to understand what is base assumptions and the axioms that they're working from. And one teacher just stormed out at one point, and he wouldn't come back, and he left the school. and the school decided to expel me because I made this teacher quit because he couldn't answer some physics question. I think it was like the question was about like some like perpetual motion machine that I sort of thought of to kind of disprove some of his things that he's talking about, and he couldn't answer, and he was just like so frustrated that he quit. And so it's all variations of just being very curious, and teachers being like, because I said so, and I would not take that for an answer. And in some cases it would actually kind of become nasty and aggressive. But it was never, it was never like I meant to be disruptive or disrespect or have disrespect. I would be, I'm going to be disrespectful if you're not intellectually honest, right? But if the teachers that would actually engage me intellectually, I would totally be open and respectful.
I'm really happy to hear your parents had your back. This is so important.
Just my mom, but not my father. My father sometimes. Yeah.
One person has your back. It matters the world, I find. And this is one of the talking points I come back again and again on wherever I write, that there should be an adult in every child's life who has their back. It makes a huge difference.
I see Isabella has a follow-up, which is like, how does this experience underpin your choice what you built as Replit? Like, I think because I have such a vivid and visceral feeling of what it was like as a kid, I respect children a lot more, and I respect young people and their ability a lot more. And I think Replit has embedded in it the idea that anyone can code, including young people, and including old people, by the way, but especially young people, and a lot of a lot of platforms would shy away from that because they want to seem serious and like we're serious and give us your money, and Replit is like, no, it's program is actually fun and everyone can do it. And by the way, that was the early years of programming. If you read like how Bill Gates got into programming, or Steve Jobs, or was like, it was all very fun and exciting and something that anyone did and hobbyists did. And so we're bringing that aspect back. And I think just being someone with vivid memories of being a child, which I don't think everyone has those memories or has those feelings, make me understands the capacity of kids to build really impressive things and be productive, and take them seriously. And so you see in a lot of ed tech software, like the application is almost talking down to children, like everything is cats and dogs and whatnot. But Replit is very hackery and very technical, and we don't we try to make things accessible, but we don't take a tone that we know better. We also make it free form and let you do what you want. So it has a lot of freedom embedded in it. At the same time, we try to make it easy to get started with.
Yeah, definitely lots of abstractions too, and believing in children being capable of handling those abstractions. I think this is something I don't see in textbooks. I don't see in educational apps. It's always like, maybe if we could teach you fractions with pizzas, but maybe children can actually handle understanding fractions as relationships versus pieces of food. And like you could use manipulatives, but maybe you could like go further with the abstraction, like teaching fraction as an abstraction of a relationship between a smaller piece of pizza and a larger piece of pizza. And yeah. I think when we ignore children's capacity for abstraction, for being able to do abstractions, I think that's not taking children seriously. So building on that, Amjad, I wanted to ask you, if all goes well, do you think like what I'm seeing here is that one of the things that Replit solves, one of the problems that Replit solves is that it's it maybe removes class, a very pregnant class division that I see between children who use the internet as consumers and those who use internet as creators. And we've had this conversation in other salons, and Isabella was there. And both of us keep saying that, and I think even Anna had this idea at some point, that there's the good internet. And I feel there's a class division there, because we know the good internet, we know how to, bring our children to this salon with this great founder, with this interesting people, and then internet is good for them. But there's a division maybe that not all children can overcome. And I think with Replit, maybe we're able to break through that.
Yeah. Yeah. So zooming out really, really far, like just think about the stages that humanity have gone through. Started as hunter-gatherers, and then we had the agricultural revolution, right? And so when you go, when we were hunter-gatherers, like most people knew how to hunt and gather. And then you go to get agricultural revolution. Again, most people knew how to work in this environment, how to plant, how to make food and store it and do all of that stuff. And then you have the industrial revolution. With the industrial revolution, for the first time, we had mass literacy, because everyone had to learn to read and write, because we had these big corporations and big governments, and people were employed by these large systems to be able to produce a lot of really useful things for people. And people learned math and physics, and learned the basics of things that run the industrial society. And we produced a lot of people that know how to work in the industrial society. And now we're in the middle of this massive shift from industrial society to primarily an information society. What I mean by that is, it's not like, we don't need factories anymore, but a lot of things will be automated. A lot more people is going to work in some capacity as a knowledge worker, as an information worker. Most people's lives is run by software. Like just try to reflect on, select any day at random. Just reflect about how much of your day is driven by software. Like we all wake up, look at our phones, and then we do our work online, our money, we manage our money and finances online. We connect with our friends online. We our records in the government or the hospital, healthcare, whatever, is all managed by software. All our lives is managed by software. Yet, unlike the agricultural revolution or the industrial revolution, so far most people do not know how to manipulate or create software. Most people do not know how to manipulate data in a proficient way, and so it creates this unbalanced world where there are the software creators and the software consumers. And we feel like this creates a lot of problems that we're seeing today. Like there's a lot of problems that are downstream from this digital divide. And we think once actually we get to a point where computer science is taught in school, where more people know how to create and make software, it'll actually be a much better place, because it has all these downstream effects on education, on freedom, on democracy, and financial economic progress. It just doesn't make any sense. I think Peter Thiel called this the paradox of the internet. The internet was supposed to be this great equalizer, yet most of the wealth that was created by the internet was captured in a small geographic location, namely Silicon Valley and maybe the greater United States. And so we feel like we're in the middle of this massive shift towards a primarily software or information age. And and Replit is gonna play a huge role in spreading computer science and training the next generation of creators in making creating software more fun and exciting, and something that we do just like creating media, just like creating a TikTok video. You would create a game or software, and if this vision of the metaverse, for example, which I'm not sure I 100% believe in, but if this vision of the metaverse will come to be true, then like imagine just like the same percentage of people that we have that can make software today, which is less than 0.5%. Imagine this, like how unbalanced that world is. Like all of us are just like, most people are just dependent on this very, very, very tiny minority to make all the software and all the things in the metaverse. And in some cases, we are already living in the metaverse. On average, people spend 5 hours on a computer screen. Most of this is consumption. Most of this is, you're being manipulated by ad-based businesses a lot of the time. And by the way, I don't take it like a very hard line on ad-based businesses. I think in some cases they've actually proven to be quite effective at for small and medium businesses to kind of reach people and all of that. There's some value on it, but there's also a lot of risk. There's also a lot of, you can feel the manipulation whenever you use a lot of mass consumption apps like TikTok or YouTube to try to get you to stay and click and all of that stuff. And so I think when more people really understand how software works, how data works, it's gonna be more balanced and more fun. Software will be more local. I think people will create a lot more software to run their communities, and software. Local software means that you build software that has your cultural values as well. Right now, when you have a multinational corporation in Silicon Valley creating all the software in the world, there's like a bit of a flattening of culture. All the software kind of looks the same. We're all in this era of skeuomorphism and then flat design and whatever. Whereas if you have this diversity of software, of course, software will look very different in different parts of the world. And so for all these reasons and many more, I can talk for a lot longer. I think getting to a place where at minimum, everyone knows how computers work is going to be hugely impactful. And then I think everyone will use some amount of programming, whatever shape it's going to take in the future, in their jobs because we can't just rely on a small minority to create all the programs in the world. And by the way, Haya just joined as well.
Yes, welcoming Haya. So nice to meet you and so nice to have you here, Haya. I'd like to move on to you, maybe also building on Amjad. I'd like to hear more about how you guys view the design of such a space. And I know you're a visual designer, but at some point you really took over designing the user experience. And I'd like to learn something from you today. How do you do that? How do you do that well?
How do I do user experience design?
Yeah.
Yeah. I try. I think it's just like I don't know if I'm good or not. I feel like there's always room for growth. But it's just I think it's just take some certain skills in the designer to first have empathy, a lot of empathy to people, so that we don't have any judgment for anyone, and any question is can be taken, because there is no dumb question or smart question, and keeping an open mind and not taking things too personally. Sometimes you know, when people design something or build something, they become super connected to this thing as it's part of their personality. And it's very important to have a like to have a new eye for the design all the time and for the user experience all the time, to detach oneself from the designs was made. So to keep like questioning, like, is this good enough? Is this something that people will understand? If this is a difficult concept, how can I make it like easier and easier and easier? And putting yourself out there, taking everyone's feedback, anyone's feedback. It could be like a 5-year-old kid feedback, or 20-year-old, or someone who is like expert, or someone who's a beginner, and keep an open mind of listening to them and what they think about what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. Sometimes it's what they feel. It's not like what they're seeing. Sometimes what they're seeing is cool, but they don't understand. And if they don't understand, then like, why do they don't understand? So there are multiple layers in the design, which like it starts from the functionality and the communication and how that makes them feel. So it's like, it's a lot of layers that build on the top of each other. Um, so I think what I'm trying to say is just like being humble and try to take everyone's feedback, and is the key.
I really feel like just feedback from my children too. It's so totally frictionless to interact with Replit, and I think there's tech in there, but there's also a matter of design. So I think I was burning to ask you this question to begin with. Haya.
Yeah, I can add a little bit on Haya, like and I think her superpower is to ask very simple questions and not take hand waving for an answer. I think there's a lot of hand waving in tech, and people use big words, and people will sound smart but not actually say anything, right? And so she will repeat the question. If you try to bullshit, she'll repeat the question. She'll keep repeating a question forever until you give her like actually a common sense answer. And so I think it's so simple, yet it's so effective because, and by the way, most people like do not mean to bullshit, but most people are like imitating what they hear or what they've seen in school, or they'll use buzzwords, right? Because buzzwords sound smart. And so it's such a simple thing, but I've seen it be very effective with Haya.
I mean, it's the whole word cell movement.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
like I think it's like unlearning what you learned, right? Which is very difficult. Like sometimes you try to question like what is this thing like you're trying to say here? And what is like the underlying thing that we want to communicate? And like I don't think about this just like in tech. I think about it like, you know, like in everything. And now I have kids, like or like in sports, like how can we unlearn what we learn? How can we learn like new concepts and new things and communicate them in a simpler way to everyone? Not that, like, not particularly for people who are in tech. Like, to answer your question, like you mentioned your kids are using Replit. Is that right?
Yes.
Or yeah.
Yeah.
So like so like the frictionless, it's like once you get to a point like the 5 whys, and people like, why are we building this? Because like this, and then why are we doing this? And like, you know, it's just like that philosophical method. So and then you get to root, and then it's very important to get that root as soon as possible for the people, because now like it has shortened the journey. So that's the frictionless. It's not easy like to design something very simple. Like people usually say, oh, like onboarding is like, to fix onboarding, best onboarding is no onboarding. And it's extremely hard to do no onboarding and to design no onboarding. And it's just like to shorten that path as much as possible to get to the root cause of every project. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is so important in all aspects of life, actually. And there's this maybe bias of knowledge that we all carry around, and we maybe sin with it even with our children.
But it's also exactly the same thing that Amjad, you mentioned you were doing to your poor physics teacher, pushing him down to nullius in verba / first principle until he ran out of the classroom, the school, and maybe the entire profession. So maybe you guys actually found the one audience who likes to ask fundamental questions, which is the 5-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not high school teachers. I mean, some high school teachers in physics who just want you to take things for granted actually have to go to the demographic that likes to think down to the roots still, and somehow create an environment where we don't educate children out of their best quality, which is to healthily question the foundations of society, reality, technology, or their own abilities. So it's just an interesting, you basically shared the same story in a different context, and I just love it.
We a friend of mine visited us in like maybe 2015 from Jordan, and he hung out with us for like a day, and at the end he said like it's so exhausting hanging out with you because like, you know, we'll sit down and we'll like question what plates are, or like we'll take something like every day. Actually, my favorite story about Haya was like we're sitting down and she's like, what is furniture really? And she was like, she wanted to understand like the essence of furniture, because we didn't have a lot of furniture at our home. You know, we're trying to understand like why would we need a lot of it, or why would we need why do you need anything other than like a mattress on the floor? And so yeah, this friend of mine was like, you know, I love you guys, but it's so exhausting. We have to question everything. It's like
Yeah, I'm looking forward when you guys are gonna be brought to exhaustion by your own children. Why is it
right.
not happening already? But you'll get to the bottom of the universe, I think, and you'll be
Yeah.
exhausted.
I like the way I was introduced to programming is through Amjad. So I didn't know a lot about programming or about tech, and just like I asked so many questions and try to understand why people are excited about programming. Like what makes them excited, what makes them go in a flow. And then it's just the idea of everything in tech or like products, it breaks down into code. Like I'm a designer, like the programs I use are coded, and like there are programmers who created it. There's always like programming in the tools, and it's the power. Like if you want to be like in front of a computer and you're not a consumer, you want to be a creator, you need to understand how things work. Like for example, like I remember one of the aha moments for me, or multiple ones. The first time I wrote Hello World with Amjad, it was one of them. When we created like a folder for HTML and folder for CSS, and we opened the Chrome DevTools, and it was the first time I see Hello World in a browser on the computer, and I was like, wow, is that like a website now? And he was like, you can add your picture, and I was like, wow, now I can see my picture on the internet, and it has a URL, but I didn't know that it's not functioning yet. Like it's just like, you know, like just an interface. It's not functioning yet, right? The other aha moment where I felt like, wow, programming is like an extremely like important tool for everyone to learn. When I wanted to send flowers to a friend of mine in Jordan, and I was in California, and I spent the whole day trying to check out, and I couldn't check out because the radio button was broken on the interface. And when Amjad came back from work, he opened the DevTools on Chrome, and he did the selection programmatically and checked out programmatically. And I was like, I feel like there was like a bulb in my head that I was like, wow, like if everyone can, I spent the whole day trying to check out and I couldn't check out because I'm blocked with a UI because this is how I use the internet. Then it became like a question, like the recurring question for me, for everyone who is into programming. Do you remember the aha moments? Do you know why do you like programming, or what was your path into programming? Because I know mine. I'm not a programmer, but I know how it's useful.
Yeah, I can really see how actually your curiosity, Haya, really enriches this. It's really obvious, really evident. One of Nicholas was asking, how do you think Replit actually makes programming more fun and enjoyable?
I think infusing it with social interaction is a big part of it. So Replit is like, the best multiplayer editor, one of the first multiplayer editors out there, and we make multiplayer super fun. And the other thing is we have a super active community. So if you go to Replit sign in, in the homepage, you can see the trending apps. And you can fork any of these apps. You can work with other people in the community. We abstract a lot of things that typically take a lot of time. And so we remove all the friction in order to get you started with coding super quickly. And then just like the aesthetic and the art that we produce and the feeling we try to give people on the site is about fun. And a lot of IDEs and editors don't have that fast feedback loop. Even the name Replit comes from that idea of a REPL, of this interactive programming. And so, yeah, just like speed and interactivity, zero setup, social, and like a really great community and a great selection of libraries and apps to kind of remix and fork and reproduce from is probably a big part of it.
So yeah, this really sounds Herculean, like making things simple. And this brings me to the title of this salon. It seems like your imagination is boundless, and like, how do you keep it real? How do you actually anchor yourself and like take this immense task and like break it down? And how do you do it on a day-to-day basis? Like, I'm really curious, how does your day look like? You guys are also together, you guys are like married, and there's love and there's children. How does your day look like? I'm very curious about this.
It's not easy, to be honest. Like, especially when we had less resources. Around the time we had Shams, it was a little difficult, and stressful. But I guess you just like take it one day at a time, and always trust that the future will be better. Our days, back then we will, literally like spend like, go back and forth who's taking care of the kid. We'll have a nanny for like half a day, and we switched nannies so often just because we weren't happy with how they were handling Shams, because we care a lot about our children, their health. We care a lot about how they eat. We care a lot, and so it wasn't easy to also find someone that was aligned on that. And so Haya would take phone calls and would be on the laptop with Shams in one hand, and I've done that as well before. And we got super scrappy. We were also traveling. Like, it was 2020. San Francisco got super claustrophobic for us because of the lockdown and all of that. And so we went down to Southern California in the summer and spent like a couple months there. And we got just used to being super scrappy and like not sleeping a lot, and just like, I guess there's just like this feeling of gratitude for the moment. We're just always happy to be doing the work we're doing, to being part of this adventure, and just like believing that the future will be better, and we just take it one day at a time. Today is hard, maybe tomorrow's is easier, and over time Shams also got a little easier, and he just got used to like being in a lot of different places around different people. At some point when we went to southern, we were like this in Oceanside, this like place north county of San Diego, and a bunch of people from our team came with us. So we had this house, we're renting together. So other people on the team will also take care of Shams while we're working, and so it was this communal thing. And then when we had Amar, our daughter, recently, it was a little different. We had a little bit more resources. Haya was able to take some time off. I was able to take a little bit of time off because we had the company was bigger. We had more help around. But even today, we're just like winging it. Where you just get used to it, and we're like, okay, I'll take care of this kid, you'll take care of that kid, we'll put this one to sleep, we'll trade, whatever. And the most important thing is to I think have fun with it and just like be in the moment, and just be grateful. Like these kids are amazing and are a gift from God, and we're so happy about that. I'm so happy and driven with our work, which is also a gift. And I just wake up every day excited to do more and to build more stuff, and to engage with our community, and to innovate, and work on really hard problems, and solve really hard problems, and interact with our engineers, who are some of the best engineers, and our designers, who are also some of the best designers in the world. And so and just having a lot of fun with it, and take things one day at a time. What do you think of my answer?
I mean, it's your world, right? I can talk about my world. So because I also nurse, and I'm like on the clock with the kids. I'm sorry if there's a background noise. So the way I think about it, I'm on the clock of like schedule every day, and I try to get the best out of it within the schedule. Like, meaning I wake up, I have 30 minutes to work out. So with these 30 minutes, there are no excuses. I try to get the best out of these 30 minutes. And then I have another 2 hours to meet up with the team. So I try to get the best out of it with the team. I try to have the best out of everything within like these time phases as much as I can, because I think about like outcome a lot. Like my goal with the outcome of the workout is to lose baby weight. So it has to be done within 4 months. So it's a lot of strategy thinking, a lot of like outcome thinking. And at the end of the day, when the day is over, like 5 p.m., now it's like having fun with kids. So I need to be extremely engaged, like and no work as much as I can, but it always come back. But yeah, like this is how basically I spend the days from day to day.
This is very inspiring. I really love this idea of dividing up your time and then making the best of it. I think this is a struggle or challenge too. I mean, for me at least, to like have my mind in the place where I am and what I'm on right then. Really admire that.
I feel it's very challenging as a mom, and I'm also like exclusively nursing. Like and there's like all this mom guilt with the first and then the second born and all of that. It's just to, and also like being dedicated for like in yourself and taking care of yourself as well. So it's challenging. And then there's like this bit that Amjad shared with me, Jordan Peterson, and he says like uh, moms with difficult jobs, they know exactly what it takes to make their day productive, meaning they know that they have to work out. So they wake up at 4 a.m. to work out. They would get um, a more a more powerful microwave that like if it's like 10-second more powerful microwave, they would choose that more powerful microwave. They would design their day around like what is efficient and speed, so they can optimize for moments, or like for like the 30 minutes workout, or an hour with the kids, or an uninterrupted, you know, meeting for 30 minutes for creativity, stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's I very much identify with that. There's this translation of your ambition two ways, both from being an ambitious working person to you want perfection down to how you dress your kids, to what they put in their mouths. You're starting to plan everything for their future. You want absolute perfection in all domains. And I think I've struggled with that, but there's something about going for the best that's very, you know, defining, and I think it's hard to escape. But also another dimension of that is, you know, just give the job to the busiest person, and they'll do their best, and they'll excel at it because they want to be efficient.
I also believe in like workout so much. Like workout is like it creates like a callus in the head and in the mind. Like it's very important. Like when a person works out on a level of an athlete, and I consider myself that, you get to a places where you start to questioning like why you're here and what you're doing, and like, is it really important that I need to do this PR, or I have to do this PR? It's just like, it's like life going in cycles. Sometimes it's going to be like really hard, like trying to climb and this mountain, or cycling through this mud, or it's getting like really hard, but then it just like it drops, you know, it just drops, it gets easier, and then it goes up again. And it's very similar like in startup mode. You just like, you're grinding and grinding, and then it's like it's very difficult, and it's like a moment of like, you know, happiness, everything is working, and then like it gets easier, and it's do it again and again. And I think like, you know, if like this is like for me what is life is about, it's just like these like cycles. It's hard and it's easier, hard and easier. Yeah.
Then you gain some mass, and then you gain some stamina. It's all worth it. I'll open the floor again to questions, based on, you know, just our most recent points, but also if you have any other curiosities, I'm so happy to hear. Yeah,
Violetta. My name is Kelly Tantia. I am a friend of Violetta, and I'm so happy to be here, being able to listen to this wonderful talk. I also work in technology, and I have for many years. And I was really impressed by Haya's response regarding user experience, because that's a constant problem that we faced, whether it's an out-of-the-box product that we're dealing with, or a custom product. I'm curious, besides applying empathy, which I love, I just love that you said that you have to have empathy for the end user and really put yourself in their shoes. I'm curious if you do you have like a common top 3 items that you face in all of the, or do you have 3 patterns that you've identified over the course of your work? Maybe whether it's design challenges or technical challenges?
So design challenges or technical challenges or patterns that we identify, and I think like this is like Amjad also has a lot to do on this and to say on this. Like we do think that, you know, what we're building is not easy, whether it's like from technology side or from user experience, meaning making them retain to programming. It's extremely hard because people, when they come into programming, let's say I want to learn how to code, there are like 2 personas. One of them, they know exactly why they want to code, so they come with predetermined with an idea in their head. That's why they want to code. But then you have other persona that they heard about programming in school, but they don't know how it applies, and it's very hard to retain them. So this is like a UX challenge. So how can I solve this? Like so many people are trying to solve this, and it's not easy. Takes a lot of testing and a lot of thinking through their psychology, like and there are many of the things that we think of that could like make the UX much better. It needs AI. So sometimes we dream about like what it looks like if the prototype is like that, but then you need an AI. So the technology is not there yet, which makes it like, you know, challenging as well.
I think maybe one of the things that AI will bring, which I kind of already see in art, just facilitating this word cell to artist pipeline. I think like I've seen people who are good with words create really good art. And I'm starting to think that people who are good with words will create really good pieces of software, and at least, or maybe remix them well. So yeah, that's something I've been thinking about. So Ruben, Say actually raised their hand. Go ahead, Say.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My questions, I have 2 questions actually. I don't know if that's still allowed, but so the first question is about AI in creativity. So we're seeing a lot of like AI tools now coming up, Copilot and things like that in coding. And I wonder whether you think that will will inhibit or, you know, encourage more creativity. How much of the coding process or software development process is mastery of patterns versus, you know, just figuring out ideas. I think that's one question. The second one is related to something that Anna tweeted about Europe and US, and somewhere between the relation between faith and atheism, and between faith versus atheism versus like progress and stagnancy. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
What was the? By the way, good to see you. I don't know how to pronounce your first name, but we've interacted.
Shay. Yes, Shay.
Yeah. We've interacted a ton on Twitter. I love your tweets.
Yes.
Yeah. What's Anna's tweet? What was the context there?
So Anna's tweet was something about like how Europe is more secular, and it's like a lot more stagnant. It's like there's something about the US that's like, and there's more faith in the US. And
right.
my counter was that, is it possible that the faith is what drives the progress, or is it the other way around? And I don't know the answer, But I don't think there's like I don't even know if there's an answer, but I was wondering, I thought you might have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that actually, and I'll back into the AI in a bit, but the title of this session I think was lifted from one of my blog posts, which I think it was titled Kierkegaard and Entrepreneurship, and I sort of use this idea of the infinite and the finite, and the idea is like that, the finite is this everyday things. It's obvious sort of things, and you might call it secular as well. It's the scientific, it's the secular, it's the mundane, it's the everyday thing, it's the obvious thing, right? And then there's the infinite. This is the world of dreams. This is the world of what's possible. This is unbounded potential. This is imagination, all that stuff. And they're often at odds. And I would say that let's say the finite is quite effective at optimization. Like if you have this initial spark, something is working, and so you get a lot of people that are very good at optimizing, and they will make it better and better and better. And that's one form of progress. And I think maybe Europe is definitely good at that. And although there are some things that are happening there that are quite concerning around energy, but but generally speaking, like things just get better, and quality of life slowly improve, healthcare improve, things like that. But if you want to invent something totally radical, you really need to have some kind of faith. And so, someone might look at Elon Musk, and obviously has this looks like he has this secular view of things, and is obviously very scientific, but also at the same time, there's something about him that's quite religious, right? The idea he's building Noah's Ark to get us to Mars. He's he often shoots from the hip and then figures things out, and he'll start a company, and then he wouldn't have a concrete plan of how it will work, but he'll learn really quickly, and he'll work really hard because he thinks something is super important, and he'll get it done. And I think that you can call it some kind of faith. You can call it that driver to do something so outside of the norm, to imagine something like landing rockets is itself a radical act. And I think there's a lot of I think the overly scientific mind, it actually closes off potentials that seem kind of crazy. And again, it's optimization versus exploration. And so I'm not very well versed in Europe and what's going on there, but I can say for sure that America has something about it that's not always quite secular. And someone can be atheist, but it can also be romantic, can be spiritual, can believe in American exceptionalism or whatever doctrine that's not quite flushed in sort of atoms, and I think that will produce new waves of technology, things that we thought weren't possible. And you see it, every invention that came out of America came out of just crazy people, whether it's the Wright brothers or whether what we're seeing now with Elon and other people, Steve Jobs, obviously. So I do believe that we lose something when you try to be extremely rational, and I think because our brains just don't work that way. You need to take these leaps of faith, and in order to take these leaps of faith, sometimes you just have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe that there's a better potential out there. And a lot of times you're going to fail, but that's also fine. And also America kind of appreciates entrepreneurships. It's okay with failure. It's okay with failing once, twice, and third time. And all of that, I think, produces new types of inventions and so on. On the AI question, so I think coding right now is quite laborious. Like, Replit takes away a lot of the setup and a lot of the just mundane tasks, IT tasks of installing everything and making sure the versions are right and all that stuff. But there's also still a lot of labor in code itself. Like, a lot of times you already typed up that program, you already typed out that function. It's hard to reuse it. You copy paste it. Sometimes you're writing test cases and it's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of patterns. And I absolutely believe that AI will help us solve that more and more. But the active programming itself, the abstract active programming, will not change. And programming is about thinking about a problem, breaking it down to its different components, and then coding up these components to solve problems, thinking about the interfaces between these components. I think these things are going to be really hard for at least the current generation of AIs to solve. And so AI assisted coding, I think, is going to make programming more fun. It's going to make it more accessible because it will kind of solve a lot of the syntax errors, a lot of the formatting issues, a lot of the random crap that programmers have to deal with. And so it'll automate a big part of that out, but the creativity of the programmer is still going to be necessary. Now, the big question is, like, when is AGI coming, and then will AGI actually solve kind of programming? And my belief is that we're probably far off, and there's going to have to be a lot of innovation in the AI space before we get to anything closer to AGI. But even then, like, it won't have any desires. It will still be a tool. Like, a lot, this gets into theory of consciousness and AGI and things like that. Like, I think AGI will, in my opinion, will still be a tool. And a lot of the complexity of humans, whether you believe in God or you believe in evolution, it's the same. It's like there's something imbued in us to desire things, to survive, to love, and that will not just randomly merge into a computer, especially if we're not going to program it into it. And so maybe even when we get AGI, it will still be a tool that will help us command computers in a more effective and efficient way. And so my view is that AI is going to help our mission at Replit to kind of reach more people and get more people and include more people in programming. And it's going to be super exciting. One kind of image I have in my mind is like being able to talk to your phone and for your phone to generate programs on your behalf. Because a lot of times it can't do exactly what you want to do on your phone. So there should be a way for you to express what you want in a program-like fashion, and for the computer to actually be able to generate the program for you. And so I think that world will come, and this is the kind of thing we're passionate about, is that if people understand really how software work, and as the tools are becoming better, we're going to get to a place where the expressiveness of programming is going to be something so outside of this world, but it's so amazing as well.
Ruben?
Yeah, so I'm Ruben, Isabel's son, and I didn't really know a lot about Replit before coming into this. So my question was more like very much based on the base of Replit, but how long have you actually been working on it? And do you have a lesson system at all? And if so, like, when did you start implementing that in your like work process?
Yeah, so depending on how you count, as a company, we started in 2016. As a side project, it started in like 2009, 2010, but it took a lot of different twists and turns across different companies and startups. And so it's been an obsession for a long time, and the idea has been with us for a long time, but we haven't been able to focus on it, partly because maybe we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the network to start a startup, but we've been able to focus on it since 2016. And with Replit, one thing we did differently from my time, say, at Code Academy, is that we didn't start with the lessons and the curriculum and the pedagogy, which is super important, but we felt like what was missing was the tool and the infrastructure and the technology and the community. So we built that first. But now what we're seeing is a lot more. What we're seeing is a lot of teachers have sprung up to teach programming on Replit. So if you go to like YouTube, there are like a bunch of like 10-hour courses. If you go to, there's a creator called Clever Programmer, recently taught a 10-hour course using JavaScript, with a bunch of Python using Replit, and we link to a bunch of tutorials on the site as well. But we're also going to get to a point where we're going to have lessons on the site to like make it easier to get into programming. But our passion lies into actually making it a place for creation. So we haven't invested as much into the individual content and lessons. We sort of relied on creators in the Replit community and within the outer community. And there are people making hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars actually teaching using Replit. There's this bootcamp called App Brewery, for example, that does this program called 100 Days of Code. And they made God knows how much money, and all of their content is hosted on Replit, and all of their students goes to Replit. So we've sort of relied on the community for that, because the technology part has been super hard to build. Just the idea of like being able to kind of have a full programming environment in the browser weren't been done before we started working on it. And so it required a lot of innovation, and still requires a lot of innovation today in order to deliver this to a massive audience of millions of people. All that being said, is that we absolutely need to have better learning material on the site. So we're investing in that right now. I think expect to have something in the next month or two that makes it easy for total beginners to come and explore the site and learn how to make things.
And I think you wanted to comment maybe on the previous topic of religion. And
is it okay to go back to it? I don't want to like derail.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a legitimate follow-up question to this, which is why I'm going back. So my original tweet, and I think Shay, your comment was much better than the original tweet. But I just spent more than 3 weeks in the US, and every time I'm there, I feel so deeply religious. And every time I come back to Europe, it's like gone. And I feel to be in a very different kind of mental state. I have other like spiritual sources in me. It's not like I feel depleted or unable to go on, but I feel that, there are psychological, findings about how being in a bigger space gives you bigger ideas. And we'll talk about big S space, America, right? You're there and you're like, well, you have like a couple of oceans and a bunch of really cool stuff here. And then you come back to Europe and you feel like, oh, one cathedral and another one, and you just don't care, right? You want out, you want to read, you want to think about something that is not here.
Something about the desert for me.
Yeah, desert I love. And actually I felt like I've been to Israel a couple of times. Part of my family is Jewish, and I felt kind of similarly. And this is not like you feel Jewish there. I feel like proto-religious, like you're suddenly there and you understand why 3 world religions are here, right? Like there's something, like I always say, there are no atheists in Israel. You put your foot down on Ben Gurion Airport and you're incepted, like that's it. But this also makes me think about the new countries and being a pioneer. And I grew up and I went to school mostly in Europe, and I was taught that the more progress we had in the course of our development as societies, the more atheistic we would become. But when you go to America, you're in a very progressive place and you're less atheist, but then you go to Europe. And so I started thinking about whether there's something about stasis that leads to atheism, and it's not actually progress that leads to atheism. And then Shay came back with the flip of this, which is amazing, that what if it's, what if it's actually like you need faith in order to get progress. And so of course, progress can't lead to the loss of faith, or only in certain cases. Which I really like. And so, I know Amjad, and I'm sure Haya also, you think about this a lot as like first principle thinkers and really deep thinkers about spirituality and kind of human drivers. Like, do you think that there will be a legitimate religious renaissance within tech? Will we let go of this idea that, oh, we are so smart now that we don't need religion? And do you feel a personal responsibility to all those millions of children on your platform to provide some form of, not spirituality necessarily, but those kinds of bonds and safety where, spiritual curiosity can also flourish? Just a simple question.
Yeah. Oh, that's super interesting. So one way I think about it is that it's I think Hegel's like thesis, antithesis, synthesis kind of thing, where the thesis was traditionalism, the antithesis was the secular liberalism, and I think some kind of synthesis could happen where it is let's say transcendent technologicalism or something like that. I don't know exactly what's going to look like. And I've actually written about it a little bit, where I wrote this article called "The Hyperreal," and it's on my blog. It's kind of dealing with the situation of digital addiction, and it's something I struggle with, and I think everyone I know struggles with. Like, the internet is so compelling, and I was thinking, like, why is it so compelling? And part of the reason it's so compelling is because it's hyper-real. And so the concept of hyper-real, I think a lot of postmodern thinkers thought about it as the idea of like reducing a complex human interaction to its absolute essence that becomes realer than real. So, for example, a Twitter like, it feels very real, right? It's hyper real. It's like, I only, put out like this, 140 characters, whatever. And then I didn't have to deal with human complexity. I didn't have a conversation with someone and had to watch their facial features to see how they're receiving my ideas. I just got this like, and I'm like, oh, this person I respect or I like, and they like my tweet, and that's interesting, makes me feel good. And a lot of times a lot of times they actually didn't engage with the idea too much. They were just scrolling and they liked it, but it just feels so real for us. It feels hyper real, for especially, let's say, for teenage girls on Instagram. Instagram feels realer than reality. So this is the concept of hyper real. You can also see it in food like Twinkies, whatever, like sweet and fat type hyper palatable food. It's also hyper real. Like, it reduces food into its most intense features. And like, how are we supposed to, as humans, deal with this fact that there's like so much potential for pleasure and addiction around us? And I came to the conclusion is that the only way humanity can deal with this is through some kind of new religion, or at least some existing religion that has guidance about how do we actually interact with the digital world, and what's right and what's wrong in our digital lives. Your question is like, will, like, say, tech or Silicon Valley have some kind of ideas there, or will we arrive in a situation where there's some kind of back to like more religious thing? maybe. I think it's quite possible. I know a lot of people are really thinking about this problem. The other thing that happened is that whenever you kind of remove religion, you get a lot of crazy ideas. Like you get a lot of other religions. So like, people have called this God-shaped hole. Like we all have this God-shaped hole, and like for example, extreme wokeism is another form of religion that's people are looking at now, or QAnon sort of right-wing conspiracy theories is another form of religion. And so when you remove that you remove the God from the God-shaped hole, a lot of other potentially destructive things will fill that hole. And so maybe we should actually actively pursue a religious system that is actually healthy and promotes human well-being. It's a very interesting question. We're not planning to do anything with it. I don't think we're going to use Replit as a platform for that. Obviously, if our users and community will organize something around it, we'll always be open to it. But I think companies at the same time need to be focused. Like, a lot of the last generation of tech companies have expanded their scope so much. Like, if you work at Google, Facebook, or whatever, like there's a feeling that you're responsible for the entire world and everything that happens in it, and you are supposed to solve inequities, and you are supposed to fix elections, and you're supposed to do all of that, and of course their mandate is quite big, but at the same time they're unfocused, and it leads to a lot of problems. It leads to a lot of bad business decisions, and so I think companies need to have a specific mandate and mission. I think overscoping that tends to be bad. But at the same time, I do think that maybe founders or certain companies that actually are interested in these things will organize around these concepts from the start.
Thank you. That was a brilliant answer, actually, to a very complex question. Thank you so much. I will be curious to see, because I think one of the strangest things to me, and I don't know about you and Haya, but to me, one of the strangest things about this whole faith thing in the past, say 10 years, let's say I became maybe an atheist early 2000s, really. I was non-practicing before, and then I had a very I had a militant new atheist phase in my life, and then I had that synthesis. But one of the things that really struck me was, I went to Catholic school, and I always had been taught that Christianity really, for instance, is the religion of the poor. And that one of the big allures of it amongst, ancient Roman slaves, for instance, was to almost like pop culture. It was hip hop. It was what liberated you and empowered you and, gave you a very strong identity. And I always thought, when I went through maybe like the darkest moments of my life, but I didn't feel any faith. But now that I'm a leader myself, and I have responsibility, and I'm responsible for other people's livelihoods and fulfillment, and a lot of other things, and also all the people using my platform and their experience, I feel much more like full of faith, because now I don't know what to do. Like, I can't be on top. I don't know anything. No human can be on top. Suddenly you realize, when you're a leader, that you can't be where it ends. You have to have somewhere to appeal, whether that's a philosophical thought, whether that's an elder in your family whose advice matters to you most. And to me, that really surprised me. When I was down at the bottom, I was super materialistic survivor, like, I'm not giving up. And I think we don't really talk about it, but when we talk about empowering users, empowering humans, giving every individual full access and ability with technology, with words, with the internet, then we are looking at swaths of people who will go through this process, who will be like, I no longer have to live in opposition to the elite. I'm the elite. I have an internet. I have a Replit account. I can do this. And I think that, these new feelings will arise, I think, in more people than before. So I will be curious to see how that unfolds.
I don't know how I think about like religion, if I think about it like Amjad or you, Anna. Like, for me, it's just like something that like it's maybe Amjad can explain it more because I'm a very intuitive person. But it's just like in the background, and I think about like Replit, if it, like, what is Replit and what is the community is about, and what is driving them, like as an energy, because like there's energy, right? And it's like the love of programming. So it's the love of programming, and then this is what drives them, this is what brings them together, this is where the most of the energy is, and I feel my commitment is to fulfill that even more. If there's like, and I need to bring it more and more to them. And how can I do that? It's by bringing new concepts for them, where they can learn, where they can like love it even more and explore more and be curious even more in the love of programming.
I love this. It's almost like, as a leader, you have almost a duty to have a strong spiritual practice, whether that's meditation or whatever it is you do, because you are the source and the emotional balancing point for other people. And you have to be a little bit, I think, one step at a time. I don't know. I really started even rethinking like fundamental texts of Western democracy when I became an actual leader. Like, you're CEO at the beginning when you register your company, but it doesn't mean anything, right? It's like a gradual process. Because I started realizing, the whole paradox of secular leadership, and how most, 18th, 19th century documents on which we have, based our Western democracies were written in a religious context, from equality to rights to kindness, the collective care. And then at some point we decided to just like pull the rug underneath, only leave the words. And then we are entering a period in like international politics when some people are like, yeah, but these words don't mean anything. And I think one of it is because we cut off the roots. And I don't like, we talk about like religious crisis on the individual level, but I posit that we have a collective religious crisis, because we have political systems under which there's nothing now, which originally led to the formation of those ideals and notions. And I think the big job, and I think what you guys are doing, which is going first principles, rebuilding the roots for people, what work means, what education means, what knowledge means. Like this is the task ahead in the next maybe 50 years to rebuild those foundations. Because if it's just like floating, at some point one generation will be like, we don't actually want to be equal, like Eastern Europe, we don't actually want liberalism, we just let's illiberalism. And I don't think that we should all get there. It's a dangerous place to go.
Yeah, that's why I'm a fan of this like synthesis concept. Like, you don't want to throw the sort of baby with the bathwater. Incidentally, I invested in a company called Synthesis, which does education, and they have some
of the girl who, this amazing young woman who is the ambassador, I think, at Synthesis School.
Yeah, I think she has the same name as yours, right? Anna?
Anna, yeah, she has two names that I forget. I'm sorry, but she's amazing. I follow her on Instagram. She's an inspiration.
Yeah. And I think they have some ideas around how to introduce spirituality and introduce that sort of thing into what they're teaching and how they're teaching. But I really like just this concept in general, that there needs to be forward progress, but we also need to learn from the past. I think there's this mistaken belief that the past was this unfortunate place, full of injustice and what have you. But I don't think that's always the case. And I think even if it was the case in some cases, like there's still a lot to learn from that.
Yeah, and I think we've been warned by thinkers before that rationalism alone doesn't work. I mean, even Gödel proved this mathematically. Like he was all his life, he started as a child, he used to be called Mr. Warum, like Mr. Why. And he kept asking the question why until he saw that mathematics fails to be standalone, rationalist alone. So, I mean, what else other than the mathematical proof that there's a limit to reason? And also, I think that's what Nietzsche had in mind when he said God is dead, maybe, that, there's some place there that needs to be filled in again. Yeah, he was very, very unhappy. Gödel was very, very unhappy, and he was misunderstood, it turns out, in his life. Like what followed was a deep misunderstanding, and the postmodernism coming in full force, as if that was the response to the proof that mathematics cannot stand alone. And turns out that he was really understood by Einstein, and he was really depressed when Einstein passed, because they were friends. Any other questions? If not, I have my closing question.
So I have one last question, which is to follow up. So Amjad's last, or one of the points about the past is there, or maybe like a bit of a comment, but I'd love to hear what he thinks about that, or actually what everybody thinks about that, to be honest. It's not just what's name. Is there a universe? So one of the things that kind of like bugs me is, even when we talk about progress, is just how much progress we don't make. I think in terms of like, especially when I look at the West, it's just how much progress isn't made and how much energy is spent litigating and litigating the past. It seems that there is a version of culture or the culture war that is either the past was good and we should go back, or the past was bad and we should do away with it, but very little about like what the future could be. And I do wonder if there are thoughts from anyone in the room about the obsession with the past as an anchor, and this obsession with the past as an anchor, this lack of like just imagination of the future. And this is not like, I don't think anyone on any of the sides of whatever cultural or political spectrum seems to like imagine what the future could be. And just to think about, so it's like, yeah, that's basically the thing. Yeah. Like isn't this all, even when we talk about like, oh, we shouldn't abandon the past or like whatever, or condemning the past, isn't still just like an obsession of the past with the past? Why do we think people aren't really obsessed or imaginative about the future? Comments, thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think I think there's definitely can't be too much obsession with the past, and the idea that it's the ultimate guidance for how humans should organize and live, I think is not absolutely right. And there's a lot of things that changed, and the sort of like the extreme obsession with the past leads you to something like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, right? The idea like everything science and technology is bad because it robs us of autonomy and all these different things. So instead of him looking to the future to solve some of the, by the way, like if you've never read the Unabomber Manifesto, I really recommend it, because it actually is a fairly good critique of technology, and his solutions are horrible, but the critiques are very interesting. Like he critiques just like this idea of like a lot of the technology that we invent ends up centralizing power, right? But there are actually ways to decentralize power, and we've done that in the past. Like, just think about encryption. Encryption is such an amazing technology. Like, we don't talk about nearly enough about how great something like Signal is. The fact that WhatsApp, there's like 1 billion people having total autonomy over their communication is something, amazing. And so there are a lot of ways where you can use technology to actually increase freedom. Bitcoin is another one. And so then the question is like, why isn't there as much obsession with the future? I think there's like a systems answer to that. There's a culture answer to that. Like, a systems answer to that is, like, if you look at the way we structure the stock market, like around quarterly earnings and all of that, long-term vision in most cases is not actually rewarded, in terms of investors and things like that. Everyone's like so short-term focused. And part of that is like, who knows what the like Fed gonna do tomorrow and gonna change the entire market landscape. And like, how can you build like a 20-year vision in a market like that could be that volatile, and in a situation where investors don't give you credit for like the technical progress that you're making towards long-term vision. And so there's that sort of systems answer, and there's probably something to say there about inflation, how inflation destroys long-term value as well. So there's probably a systems view for why the future is so discounted. Then there's this cultural view. There's this cultural stasis like that Anna talked about, and there's this idea that the future is going to be bad, right? There are a lot of issues around the environment that are very valid that we should like really actually confront, but there's also a lot of things that people have fretted and worried about that actually they exaggerated too much. Like, there was, I think in the 70s,
the Ezra
80s,
Klein post about how he had to defend his decision of having children to his friends.
Right. It's crazy. The population bomb.
Get new
right?
friends, Ezra.
Yeah.
Come to us.
Yeah, but I mean that's his circle. That's and they I don't know if they're like true believers, or there's some angle of it where like that sort of signaling is what gets you into the group, right? And you have to signal. It's like this costly signaling theory of like, you have to say, oh, children are bad, that if we don't do anything, the future is going to be bad, and that's how you become like part of a liberal elite kind of group. But you're starting from the 60s and 70s, this idea that we're going to get overpopulated, and that's like not true at all, right? I mean, now we have this problem of population collapse, right? Which is a real problem. I don't think the overpopulation was ever like a legitimate concern, right? And there's this idea that we're going to run out of oil, which also turned out to be totally absurd, like, and that there's all these problems. Now there's this idea of like, we can't reverse climate change in the next 10 years, we're just going to all die, incinerate or something like that, which is also absurd. I think, what's that?
The ozone hole that I was really scared of when I was 10.
I mean, there was actually, the ozone hole is actually an interesting case where international cooperation actually worked.
It was fixed.
Yeah, it was fixed. Like, yeah.
Which is, very optimistic, in fact.
Yes, some of these concerns are, like I said, some of these concerns are valid, and you can actually do things about them. Where I think a lot of the sort of green environmentalist movement goes wrong is that not trusting that humans will actually figure it out and will actually build things in the future, as opposed to extrapolating the current trajectory and saying like, whatever's happening now will continue to happen. We're just going to have more babies. We're going to consume more resources. We're going to emit more CO2, and just it's all we're going to be this parasite on the planet. We're going to destroy it. We're all going to die, right? Like that's how they think. In reality, humans create problems and then they solve them. In the early 1900s, there was a huge problem in New York City around horse manure. Horse shit was filling the streets, and everyone was extrapolating like horse shit is going to become more than the human population. We're all going to die from disease, whatever. And then the car came, and the car solved all the horse shit problem. and so like you can't really predict what kind of technology will come and solve certain problems, but you have to trust that humans are actually going to be resourceful and gonna build things. And you can't have anti-human policies. Anti-human policies include restricting energy usage, forcing people to live below potential standards in order for some theoretical view of how we're going to save the planet. And so I think that sort of cultural view, and I think part of it is actually incentives. Like part of it is sounding smart. Part of it is like being part of an elite group where everyone, is signaling, everyone flies with their jets to Davos and then like talks about their climate. And so you end up in this place where like the future is bad, right? And like you don't want to think about the future because the future is bad. And of course, now kids growing up in schools are fed this information all day and they're scared and anxious about the future. And so, of course you're going to be a little bit obsessed with the past, because the past like seems like a little more like certain, like you can study it. It doesn't have all this uncertainty and potential destruction. Focus on the present and present consumption and having maximum pleasure and maximum fun today instead of investing and saving, investing in the future and building some amazing things. So I would say these are the two answers in my mind as to why the future is discounted. And I think humanity will benefit from what the Austrian School of Economics calls low time preference. And the idea is that we should be more focused on the future. We should be investing, building in order to create a better future. And that's the approach we've taken with Replit. Replit is a very low time preference kind of endeavor because we've been working on it for so many years and didn't cut corners and tried to build. We're still in the middle of it. We're still not done. In a way, we're only getting started. But it is this idea that we're going to build. We're going to solve really big problems and hopefully in the process build a better future.
Yes, Anna.
Actually, I this was such a good closing statement. Also, I don't know if I should like bring up new things. I don't know how much time you guys have. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to derail the convo. But maybe as a note, that there are two types of people. I recently had this super funny interaction on Twitter where I think Antonio Garcia Martinez posted a photo of New York City because he was visiting, and he added a comment about how this made him feel depressed and small. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, if I look at it, I feel amazing. And then Ishan, our friend, who's an environmentalist, right? He understood immediately, and he was like, yeah, because our species made this. And there's so much hope in this. Like, we figured this out, and it's not perfect, but we can assume that the future generation will be smarter. Maya here is probably the youngest person here, and she's way smarter than any of you here, including me. So, there's hope. And I absolutely love that. And I think, everybody, we all do ourselves we do ourselves a favor if we kind of just check how we think about golden ages and where our mental great filter is. Whether you really think that there was a golden age in the past, the golden age of Silicon Valley, and you're obsessed with Steve Jobs, or the golden age of, I don't know, German idealism, whatever, it is for you, where you see the genius, or whether you think like, oh, we've done nothing yet, guys. This is just beginning, right? Like, we will be seen as the cavemen and women from the Stuart Brand system 10,000 years from now. And to me, that's interesting. And I don't think that this binary is unmovable.
Right.
I think it's not, you're born, a conservative in the original sense, a nostalgic. I think it's about the cultural vibe, and we can all participate in making that.
Totally.
Yeah, I'd like to close then on this note. I'd like to ask Amjad and Haya, what does the future look like if you guys succeed?
I think if we succeed, there's going to be a lot more entrepreneurship. There's going to be a lot more startups. There's going to be a lot more exciting new software. Software will be a little bit more decentralized. It will be less this thing that Silicon Valley creates for the rest of the world. We're going to see more participation. Programming is going to be more inclusive, and hopefully we'll make the internet a little bit better and make it more focused on creation and around people of all ages, but especially kids, having fun with making and creating software and participating in building the internet as opposed to being mere consumers of the internet. And so my hope is that in some way we're going to have an impact on lifting some people out of poverty and maybe some entire countries out of poverty, because we decentralize kind of the possibility for creating wealth online, and we reduce the distance between having a good idea, and creating a good product.
Yeah, exactly. He said it all. So there's no point for me repeating it.
This was so amazing to hear. You guys have this brilliant energy that just feels good to be around. I'm left energized, full of hope for the future of my children and my grandchildren too already. I'm thinking about that. I might have 30 of them. So
That's awesome.
So happy for the faith you brought into this conversation, and also for the actual work that you're doing. So not just letting your imagination go, but like grinding every day, the little things, taking it back to the finite, making it work. I'm really, really grateful for that, and really happy for this conversation. Thank you, Anna, for providing this platform for us. And so great to have everybody here, and thanks for your input and amazing points.
Our pleasure. Thank you. Really, really great to meet everyone here. It's such a fun community, and so thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us, guys. And I know you're young parents, so we extra points of appreciation for that.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.